Hello YouTube, this is Froogle and here we are with a First Impressions series looking at the phenomenal FlyJSim 727 for X-Plane 10. Now, it's First Impressions in that I'm pretty comfortable with this. I spent quite a lot of time with it. Not comfortable to the point that I could do a full cold and dark start on this yet. So we're going to do First Impressions. That kind of gives me a little bit of leeway to get some stuff wrong, but hopefully it's still as detailed as ever. Pushback went a little bit strange there. What you're looking at here, by the way, is Pushback. The aircraft has a pushback feature built in. You can see in the options panel down here there's a pushback button. You need to manually steer it, which is why the pushback's screwed up, because I'm not very good at steering backwards. Now, as you can see, this is the 727-200. It's a fairly classic aircraft, very much in the vein of a DC-9, so very much the kind of aircraft that I actually enjoy. You long-time viewers of this channel will know that prior to me getting involved with things like the NGX, I never really touched passenger liners and airliners, and I preferred to play with older aircraft, vintage aircraft like the B-17 and rotary aircraft and stuff like that. So this is kind of a halfway house for me. A very classic airliner without a GPS, without an FMC, very, very basic inside that cockpit, as you're going to see in a second. That's a much better way to go. And very hands-on. Now, we're currently at Zurich. I'm going to get asked a question, so let me show you around real quick. This is Aerosoft's Zurich, and we're going to be flying out from Zurich today all the way down to Amsterdam. Not using VATSIM or any online traffic for this video. Might do that for the fully loaded videos, because as you know, the traffic handling in X-Plane is kind of weak. So for me to do a fully loaded, I'll probably step it up a bit and go online with VATSIM. You can see what that's like. But anyway, let's get back down to this aircraft. The sounds, the phenomenal sounds you can hear are provided by Dreamfoil. So it's the Dream Engine sound system. It really is very, very nice indeed. You should hear this thing when it's moving. In fact, you will hear it when it's moving. Currently flying a Lufthansa. Now, the aircraft comes with a number of liveries, but there is a livery pack that's been provided by Amarir. I hope I got his name right, Amarir. That's got lots and lots and lots of different liveries in it. I think this is one of his liveries. It's a really, really nice classic Lufthansa livery. I figured that would be the most fitting livery to use. Let me show you this on the menus here. So this is the menus for the 727 with all the liveries installed. So there's a 727-100 in here. There's the 200 Advanced, the 200 Freighter. You can see we've got Air Canada, Air Agal, Air Assur, Braniff, Iceland Air, Lufthansa, Mexicana, Polynesia, United, and so on and so on and so on. Lots and lots of different liveries, lots of variety. In terms of the modeling, it is very, very good. Now, this aircraft is developed by one guy, which is Jack Sketches. He is FlyJSim, FlyJ meaning Jack. He's done this all himself. Everything from the visual modeling to the flight model to the systems modeling. He is so good at what he does, he was actually involved recently in building the flight model for Ramses for their 757. I think he might have had something to do with their 777 as well. So the guy gets around a bit, he knows his job. Look at that wonderful heat blow on the back of those engines. It's kind of interesting design as well on these engines while we're here, in that the reversers, let me see if I can pop these reversers real quick. They don't extend out, they're actually embedded inside the engine itself. So I'm gonna probably do some damage here, but we'll put it in reverse, look. That's kind of a neat look. First time I saw that, I hit the reversers after landing. I didn't see the normal reverse barrier pop out the back of the engine. I emailed Jack and said, what's going on? And then he pointed out that they're actually inside. Amazing level of detail on this. Everything is exactly as it should be. In fact, the detail continues into the cockpit as well and into the cabin, as we're going to see shortly. All the animations are accurate in terms of how, not only how they look, but the time. So if I deploy the spoilers right now, you can see not very uniform in how they come up. Very almost organic in how those things deploy. Same on the flaps. If I were to lower flaps right now, which I actually need to do, because we're going to start taxiing. I'm going to put this down to flaps 20. It's an old aircraft. You can see they're taking a long time. It feels real though, really nice. You see the leading edge there, will drop down as well. Let's head on into the cockpit. show you what the office is like. So here's the cockpit. Now, I'm going to show you some of these things on the side here in a second, but as you can see, this thing, when I first fired it up, it actually was very reminiscent to me of the Cool Sky McFat DC-9. It's got that classic jetliner feel to it. It's really, really nice. This is a bit of a handful to manage as well. It's typically crewed by 3 people. So you have the captain, obviously sitting over here. You have the first officer, who likes to sit over here. And then there's an engineer back here who manages all the packs and the air conditioning, the fuel systems, the pneumatic systems, pressurization and so on, which incidentally we need to do. Now I've done a flight plan for this, which I'm not going to put up on the screen. Well, maybe I will, but I probably won't. And our flight plan says, let me just go and click on that briefly. Alright, so we're going to be cruising at flight level 240. Now, Jack has built in a number of preset views on this. I've actually changed them. If you're not familiar with X-Plane, you have a system very much like EasyDock, where you can quickly set up independent views. And I have my views that I like all set up. I've got a view over here, I think, for the engineer station. Here it is. So we're going to set up the pressurization. We're flying at flight level 240 today. I hope I can get this right. And we are landing pretty much about sea level once we get to Amsterdam, so that's all set over there. Let's just check on the lights up here. These lights can be off for now. I loaded it in the preset state, which is why those lights are on. Strobes can be off until we get to runway. Now, that's something you might have noticed there. The sounds inside the cockpit are not terribly accurate. You tend to have the same clicking sound for a lot of the switches. It is what it is. Like I said, one guy developed this, and for one guy's work, and it really is a labor of love for him. He spends a lot of time flying this aircraft, even live streams himself flying this aircraft. He's that proud of it, and rightly so. But some corners were cut. Now, I tend to look at payware add-ons as one of 4 different categories. It's a model add-on, which means it's just a nice, pretty graphical model. It's a light add-on, which means, okay, it looks pretty good and it kind of handles the way it should, kinda, but it's a nice introduction to the aircraft. There is a flight or an aero add-on. So this is an add-on where the designers and developers have tried very, very hard to produce something which is aerodynamically accurate. A2A are a great example of that. And then there's a systems add-on. So PMDG is where I put the systems add-on kind of bar. Not really A2A on it. A2A do a lot of system stuff with the AccuSim and AccuFeel, but not really systems complexity and system study like you have on the level of, say, a PMDG aircraft or even the Majestic Dash 8. This aircraft is somewhere between aero and study, in that there's a very, very accurate flight model. I mean, this thing is crazy nice to fly, really, really fluid, and very, very rewarding to fly. And there's quite a lot of systems complexity in here, so it's kind of between the two. It is not PMDG level, though. I would say in terms of flight modeling, it is A2A level, but it's kind of tricky to compare the two. One makes general aviation aircraft and one is a jet. Okay, now for today we're going to be taking off on runway 34, and we're going to be flying via VORs all the way down to Amsterdam. Our first VOR is the Zurich one, Zulu Uniform Echo on 110.050. So we're going to pop on down here and set these radios up. That's 110.50, is that right? No, it should be 05. Sorry, 110.05 is our first one. And our second one is Tango, 112.55. So we'll set that up over here on the standby. 112.5. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to tune Nav2 as well to 112.5, so I can just track it as we climb out, because that first turn onto Zurich is going to be pretty rapid. Now, we're not flying a SID on departure. We'll be flying the stars into Amsterdam, but not really a specific SID on departure, so not going to worry about altitude constraints. So I'm just going to assume if we were working with ATC, they're going to clear us up to an initial altitude, and I'm going to set that initial altitude here to about 5,000, and then we'll go up from there. Now, the autopilot system is, again, like everything else in this aircraft, very classic. Here it is right here. What we're going to do to climb out is we're going to do speed hold. We're going to do heading hold initially, and that's pretty much all we need to do, and obviously altitude hold. So the way we set this up here, let's go over here to these pop-out bars here. These are amazing. There's a weights and balance one here. There's an options here. So options is fairly straightforward. You can set the aircraft in cold and dark. You can change field of view, set the time, units of measure, and all that kind of stuff. We'll move past that. This is the weight and balance manager. Now you can click on any individual block here and add or remove weight on that particular block, which is very cool. You can add or remove the fuel in total here or per tank here. So what I did was I planned this with PFPX, and PFPX gave me the fuel that I actually need for this trip, so I set that in right here, dialing it in right here. Now this is telling us we're going to be above max landing weight, which is fine. We won't be at the end of the trip, so we're above max landing weight right now. We are under the max takeoff weight, so we're good to go for right now. That fuel obviously is going to burn off through the 350 miles of this trip, but this is very, very cool. Now over here you have the V-speeds. So what the add-on is doing is calculating your V-speeds based on the current configuration. So based on the zero fuel weight of the aircraft, the fuel that I've loaded on board, obviously it doesn't know the route I'm going to fly, it doesn't need to, it can calculate V1, VR, V2. So we're going to be climbing out a V2 plus 20, so that will be 162. So we're just going to grab this and drag the mouse down. I'm going to set it right about there. That lets us then drop down here and set up our autopilot. So autopilot is going to be speed hold. We're going to go alt select. Just like in Majestic Stage 8, funnily enough, you need to make sure whenever you're changing the autopilot, you put it in Alt Select, otherwise you're going to have an issue. We're going to put it in Heading Select as well, so Heading Select is engaged, Alt Select is armed. We now need to set up our heading, so our heading, initial heading is going to be 340 to match the runway heading. We'll just dial this all the way around here to 340. Now I can zoom in down there, make this a little bit easier, there it is. So let's just gently move this up to 340. We are going to intercept the 053 radial out to the Zulu Uniform Echo VOR. So we will dial that in, 053 as our course. There. Wonderful. So we're going to be flying that way, intercepting this radio. It should be a fairly rapid intercept. Let me just double check all the radios down here. They are tuned 110.05, then 112.5. Great. Climbing to initial altitude of 5,000. Now my flaps are currently a little bit too much deployed. I want flaps 20 on this. And I think that we are good to go. Parking brake off now. Now if you're used to FSX, you'll be quite pleasantly surprised by the ground roll on aircraft and X-Plane. I'm putting in barely any power right now, and we're moving. There's no sticky ground bug in X-Plane, which is fantastic. So let's add a bit more power in, just to counter the flaps that we have down. We're going to go out to runway 34, which is just over here. So we're going to go around the building here, line up on 34. Now I'm going to break from the norm a little bit after we take off. X-Plane has a really, really good replay feature built in. So as soon as I take off, once I get established where I need to be, we're going to fire up the replay and show you what it's like and let you hear the sounds of this plane taking off, which is something I never normally do on a first impressions video because FSX is, and I'm not dissing FSX, but FSX typically is a little bit temperamental of things like firing up FS Recorder at various stages of flight. So we don't do that, but I can in X-Plane. So I'm going to set a new standard for the X-Plane first impressions here. Beautiful scenery from Aerosoft Zurich. Now there are high definition meshes for the whole planet that just came out completely for free from alpilotx.net. I am not using them. I haven't managed to download the ones I want and get them installed just yet. So what you're going to see in terms of scenery out here is just standard scenery. Other than the clouds, of course, which are SkyMax. And I should probably qualify that the clouds I'm using are SkyMax Beta. I didn't get the full version yet, so I'm still using the Beta cloud. So if there's a difference between what you're seeing on this video and what perhaps you've seen on other X-Plane videos, that would explain why. So runway ahead. We've set our brakes up already to RTO. Let's go ahead and turn the landing lights on. We will turn the strobes on because we're entering the runway. Hear the thump, thump, thump of the main landing gear. I've spent quite a bit of time in this, probably more than I normally would do. I was actually hoping to do a fully loaded video on this now, but the systems are so complex, particularly in cold and dark start. I really didn't want to do that. I want to get the cold and dark really nailed down, and then I'll come back and do fully loaded. Alright, so we're only 14 miles away from our VOR at this point, so we are pretty much going to be turning almost as soon as we take off. We will check everything on our autopilot before we start rolling. So IAS hold, heading hold is engaged, auto altitude hold is engaged as well. Now, just like the DC-9, as we climb out here, if we were flying a more complex SID, you're managing everything through that speed hold, and you don't have an auto throttle in this, so adjusting power as necessary. And in this particular aircraft, you do need to really pay close attention to those engines. They will explode. They will catch fire if you mismanage them, so you need to pay very close attention to them. And that's kind of a resounding theme with this aircraft throughout all phases of flight. It is not a hands-off aircraft. Even though you have an autoflight system, and we're going to use it for this series of flights here, you very much need to be hands-on and monitoring everything and staying really on the ball with this aircraft, or it will get away from you, it will break, and things will go horribly wrong. The aircraft also has some phenomenal deep stall characteristics, which we'll be trying to avoid when we come into land in Amsterdam. Alright, so let's bring the power up now. Let the engine stabilize. I am using 3 throttle levers. There it comes. Alright, brakes off. We're rolling. Now luckily today the barometric pressure is 29902, which is standard, so we're not going to need to modify that at the transition altitude. It's being very gentle with those engines. 80 knots.
B1, rotate.
And pull back. Positive rate, so gear up. Bit of a bump there. Alright, we've already shot through the VOR that we want. So let's start our little turn. Bring the nose down a little bit. It's a beautiful aircraft to hand fly. It is frisky. You do need to be paying attention. It does respond to the wind around you. That is the nature of X-plane as well. I'm going to just set up an intercept course with that radial. Alright, 1600 feet, so let me just bring the heading back here to put us on an intercept. And we will actually go ahead now and engage the autopilot. So the nose is going to come down a bit, the speed is going to pick up to where we want it to be for IAS hold. So we're going to start bringing out the flaps now. You need to be on schedule with those flaps as well. There is a table down here that you can follow to show you where you need to be at each stage of flaps. Surfaces will break in X-plane. Okay, so we got the intercept now, so we're going to put this onto Nav Lock. That is now armed. Let the autoflight system intercept the localizer and you'll see how that responds. We're going to move the speed up now. We've got a good altitude here, so we'll let this speed come all the way up to the speed limit of 250. Bringing those flaps up. So let's clean up the aircraft a little bit. So we'll lock the landing gear. Taxi light off. Turning around now to intercept that localizer. We're quite off on it because we took off in a counter direction. Alright, so there we are on our speed. So we're going to reduce power a little bit here. Just going to climb up to 5,000. Once we get there, we'll assume that we've been cleared up to our cruising altitude at 240. And again, that climb up to 240 is all going to be done with IAS hold and Alt Select. Okay, now it looks like we're beginning to get back on course. 14 miles to go to the VOR. Let's go ahead and show you that replay, and you can hear the sound of this aircraft taking off. It's a beautiful thing. So go up to the aircraft menu, toggle replay mode. All you have is this replay bar. It's very, very intuitive. Just going to wind this back to where we're on the runway. You can already hear the sound there. You hear that? And there we are on the runway. Let's just play that. Listen to these beautiful engines. A little bit off the center line. Let's go for a flyby now. Let me rewind that because I can and show you the gear animation because I think it's a thing of beauty. Just rewind that just a touch more. There. Very fluid. The doors closing and locking. Wonderful. Anyway, let's get out of replay. We'll get back in the cockpit. So we're coming up at an altitude now of 5,000. You're going to hear the altitude alert kick in any second. Coming off the power to reduce our rate of climb. In fact, I think we missed the altitude. There it is. There's the altitude alert. So really controlling the rate of climb now with my throttles because I'm in IIS hold. Have to stay on that or it will start nosing down if we lose too much speed. There, we're turning onto the radial now. So let's say now we were cleared up to our cruising altitude of 24,000, flight level 240. Same principles as we use that takeoff apply. I'm a little bit too fast right now. So down to the autopilot, we're going to go IAS hold, Alt hold, and up we go. So back on the power now. And up we go to 24,000. Got to watch the distance to that radial. We will need to turn. We're going to be turning to a course of 015. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually set a heading of 015. Which is there. 7 miles to go. You see we're climbing up 1,500 feet per minute. If I wanted to climb faster at this point, I would just move the power levers forward. The autoflight system will compensate for the increase in speed by raising the nose. Very old school. Very awesome. Let's lock this landing gear. I didn't do that yet. I thought I did, but I didn't. Four miles to go. Flying over the beautiful Swiss countryside now. No GPS in this, however, you can pick up an external FMC, SIVA, and plug it in. That will give you a full IVA INS simulation within this 727. I don't have that, so we're not doing that. We're going to do things completely old school. 2 miles to go. Coming up on 1 mile to go now, so we will start our turn. And the way we're going to do that is just engage heading hold. Right about now. Or heading select. So that's turning, so let's switch to radio now. 112.5 and a course of 015. See what I mean about it being quite hands-on? There is 015. Let's go ahead now and put this into Nav Lock. And we will re-establish ourselves, coming up on 10,000 feet. So we'll run the 10,000 foot flow. So landing lights off. Let's increase that speed now up to 280. Bit more power into those engines. being careful not to give it too much. As I said, if you mistreat these engines, they will explode. A number of people have been live streaming this, and I've been watching the live streams religiously as well as flying it myself, and it's quite funny the number of people that are having major catastrophic engine failures on climb out. So having said that, I'd probably curse myself. So the nose has come down now, power has gone in, we're picking up speed to 280, now the nose will come back up and we begin our climb up to our cruise altitude. So the next waypoint we have is Metro 110.00. So we're going to dial that in. And we're on that. We're on what was the standby. There's no switching of frequencies in this aircraft, so we need to go and tune this one over here. So 110.00. Very, very simple. And that is going to be on a course of 349. So we'll just dial our heading hold in for that. There's 34. There's 35. So about there. Now we just monitor the engines. I think I have a better view of that. Let me see if I can find it here in one of my presets that I set up. Or not. By the way, hear the sound? Slightly different sound when you're at the engineer station compared to when you're in the cockpit, in the pilot seat. Nice touch, huh? You see the atmospheric scattering kicking in, fading out the landscape in the distance there, just like in real life. A little bit of wing flex. Actually, quite a bit of wing flex. So I'm going to stop the video here and watch out for part 2, where we'll be flying the full star into Amsterdam and then doing a manual landing at Amsterdam. The scenery there again is Aerosoft Amsterdam, so incredibly detailed, just like Zurich where we just left. As always, my name is Froogle. Thank you for watching.